Hey there, it's Irene Lyon and welcome to this video, to this YouTube channel, and to this world of healing trauma, nervous system health, and all things neuroplasticity. Today I want to talk about stress and stress that is occurring to us in an acute way, meaning it's happening to us right now. And I have a question that I'm going to read from one of my followers here, and it goes something like this. Just read your blog post about stress and cortisol. I'll be sure to post that below. It's a blog post on adrenal fatigue, so I'll put that down below. They say, I have past trauma that I'm working on, which is great, but I also work as a 911 operator and police dispatcher. This is a very high stress job. I'm not in that job, but I know just by hearing that and knowing why someone would call 911 or need police dispatch, usually high stress stuff. So they say our work environment is pretty intense on many fronts. Lots of mental health callers, people in crisis, domestic disputes, car accidents, petty complaints, administrative frustrations, and pushback from the officers we work with, and just basically trying to keep things safe. They say my partner describes it as being verbally assaulted for 12 hours a day, which this person said is quite appropriate. More often than not, we are not able to walk away and shake it off or utilize any type of self-care as the phone rings as soon as we've hung up from the first call. So basically, from what I'm hearing, there's a call, you deal with it, you hang up, and there's another one right away. And then also due to all the anxiety with the current coronavirus, things are just way more intense, and there's just this lack of respect from callers. So basically, there's a lot more stress in general. Everyone's on more edge. So the question is, how does that current day onslaught and the stress that comes with it affect us, generally speaking? So here's what's interesting is that it depends on the person. And the reason I say that is someone can have a lot of stress coming at them, a lot of, intensity, and a lot of just things that are going through. But if that person knows how to process it as it comes in, and they take care of themselves when they're not at work, they're going to be impacted by this level of stress less. So I'm going to talk to this in the context of this question, imagining somebody who is a 911, on the phone call and also doing police dispatch. So there's just lots going on. You're probably sitting most of the time. There's not a lot of movement. So you're in a cubicle, just going. So the first thing is that we have to understand that our systems can process stress on the spot. So as I am talking to you here on this video, and I'll ask you these questions as I pose them, I'm feeling my pelvis on the chair. I can hear some things in the background. I'm sensing my hands moving. I can look outside at the blue sky that I'm currently looking at. Even though I'm connected to you here making this video, I have awareness of what's around me. If I am talking to you and I don't have that awareness, and it's hard for me to pretend and not have it, I get into my head, all I see is the camera, I'm not connected to my environment, I'm not connecting to my body, my feet. That in itself will be stress inducing, because all of this discussion, all of this mental activity is only in here. It's not being distributed throughout my entire system. Now, of course, this is not high stress. However, if someone is in a high stress environment and they're only in their heads, they're only in their higher brain, they are completely disconnected from their breath and where their feet are and that they can move, right? Even if you're on a telephone call dispatching, you can feel your feet, you can move your pelvis, you can shift a little bit, you can look away from maybe, again, you might need to look at a computer screen, but every now and again, if you're talking You can orient. So some of the tips I will say and tricks when we are faced with this kind of stress, like in this first responder situation, can you practice these basic elements? I call them neurosensory exercises, these basic elements of nervous system health. Feeling yourself connected to the ground, being able to look away every now and again. Can you put your hands on your legs and feel your flesh? Can you put your hand on the chest? And as you're talking, breathe. All these things, while they're helping you, when you are in that connected space, that will also help the other person. Because the way that you talk, whether, again, we need to have inflection and calmness in our voice, that will transfer. This is how the nervous system works. For instance, if I'm like this, and if I'm going crazy, and if I'm not da-da-da-da, and if I'm just da-da-da-da-da, just quick and sharp and jagged and all this stuff and staccato, even as I said that, you, the watcher watching this right now, you might have felt something shift. But it's not about being calm. It's not about being chill and take a deep breath and let's just be all zen, right? If someone is calling me because they're having a crisis and I try to be like that, that's not going to help them either, nor is me getting really, stressed. There needs to be this grounded yet resilient, agile, regulated situation going on. So as this first responder, you're watching this, how can you stay connected to you while these stressful things are coming in, but by moving, connecting, seeing, being, keeping hydrated, all these things, it will help your system stay regulated. Now, that's one piece. The next piece is making sure that at the end of the workday, and I'm assuming there'll be moments where you can get up, go to the bathroom, I'm hoping there's a lunch break. On those breaks, really break. If you can walk outside, get some fresh air, feel the wind on your face, some rain on your face, take your shoes off, walk on a strip of grass, something that can get yourself connected back to nature. If you can't go outside, go into the bathroom, splash some water on your face, wash your hands, move a little bit, stretch a little bit, eat some good food, do something to get the movement going in the body. When we are faced with a lot of stress and we're not aware of the stress coming in, our body can, one of the common defaults is it starts to tense up, it starts to brace, it starts to armor. And it does that because we're hearing all of these things, and I can't even imagine what a person doing 911 is hearing, really tough stuff. And so if we're not careful, we will end up being what is called vicariously traumatized by the things we are hearing, because then our mind thinks and sees these images. So we, as that person, that first responder, we also have to stay connected and let that stuff move through us. And if we're not connected to our body, it is going to just strap to us like Velcro. So first thing is, when you are working, can you stay embodied? Can you stay aware? Can you stay connected to not just what you're doing, but the environment around you? Second thing, if and when you have a break, really make it a break. Don't use it to scroll through your phone and make phone calls and do more work. Can you really eat your snack, eat your lunch, really go to the bathroom, let yourself wash your hands, take your time, dry them off, get some air, something that is breaking that cycle of stress. Now, the third thing is more global. And this person who had the question said that they're already doing some work on their old traumas, which is wonderful, so keep that up. But here's the thing, the more regulated we are, the more we have worked on our nervous system, the more we have built up what I call capacity, the more we have built up the capacity inside to be with what we feel, the more capacity we have to let the stress come in. We know it's there, and then we have the tools to move it out. So with capacity, with greater regulation, working on our own traumatic survival stresses that are stuck, as we move those out, as we grow capacity, our ability to do those first two things that I mentioned will become just second nature. They'll just start to happen more and more, and we want that. The fourth thing I will say, oh, and by the way, I'm gonna post a video below of my three-part video series. It's called Healing Trauma. The first video describes what I mean by growing capacity. And when we've had a lot of stress in our past, a lot of adversity, a lot of abuse, scary things, we know, let's just say, you know, there is held trauma in your system, our capacity is smaller, and it'll make the stress of a job that much more stressful because we're trying to put in stress into a system that's already really, really small. And so what we want to do is grow this ability to be with these sensations, these feelings, but also express and get them out. That goes back, I'm jumping here a little bit, but back to number one. When we can actually work in an environment where we're aware of what's happening, we can actually use that work environment as training ground for being more regulated. So there's often this thought that we have to take all the stress, be a punching bag, and then at the end of the shift, that's when we can shake it off and get rid of it and ground and release, etc. And I'll talk about that for point number four. But if we can actually use that work environment as I said, training ground for how to be with these stressful things so that they don't stick to us and we move them out, that is also how we build capacity. So in some ways, that job can be there as a means to help us build capacity so that we can move old traumas that have nothing to do with that work environment out. Hope that makes sense. The fourth thing falls into what we can do when we leave. So again, I mentioned a little bit, if you have a break, use that break as a real break. Do little things so that you can move your body, eat, nourish yourself, fresh air, etc., etc. But when you leave, there is something very powerful about having some kind of break between leaving the job and going home. Or maybe you get home and before you get into making dinner and doing household stuff and all the things, can there be at least a few minutes? It doesn't have to be long, of course. If it's a little longer, that's always nice. But can there be 10 minutes, 15 minutes, if possible, 30 minutes, or even an hour? I know that's not always possible for people, but some period of time, I'm going to say at least 10 minutes, where you are disengaging from that work. And maybe if there's stuff that you heard, you felt, you had to just ignore, you actually allow yourself to process it. You might need to stomp your feet. Maybe you hear a horrific story and you got a lot of anger and you got to get it out. I've got some videos that I'll post below. It's not related to this, but it's how we can get frustration and anger out. Also, is it possible for you to do some kind of self-care practice? I am a big believer in exercise and movement. So if one has been sitting, even if you've just been sitting doing good stuff all day, move the body. Can you walk a little bit? And that walking doesn't have to be a special walk on a trail somewhere. Maybe you just walk around the parking lot for 15 minutes. At that point, that could be a good time to watch, or to listen, I should say, to some music or a funny podcast or something that doesn't disconnect you from your body, but disconnects you from the work, right? So how can there be this ability to move, walk, disengage, and let that stuff come out? If we watch even a funny movie or a show, or let's say you listen to some music, maybe there's a laugh that comes out. Maybe there's a spontaneous sigh that comes out. Sometimes when we try to be too perfect in our self-care after these stressful practices, because that stress inside is so chaotic, we might not want, our body might not want to just sit there, be calm and meditate and breathe. We might need to shake it out. We might need to laugh at something. We might need to let some tears come out. Maybe we have a thing that comes in and it's just heartbreaking and we held in the tears because we had to be strong and resilient for the person we were on the phone with. Maybe there's a sense of disgust. Maybe we heard something that was really gross and it was like, ugh, that's yucky, maybe, and you're not going to do that when you're on that phone dispatching with someone. But after the fact, are there key emotions, key sensations, key images that got stamped into your mind-body connection, into your physiology, and you need to get those out? And trust me when I say, having been in private practice for many, many years, there are some times when you work with someone and the story is so intense, and with regulation, and of course the profession I'm in, we have to be there and stay regulated and as if it's just common day stuff. But sometimes you'll hear something that just, it hits you a little deeper, right? It might have a personal connection. Maybe it just hits you deeper. And at the end of those days, it's very important to not ignore that which you saw, heard, felt that was a little more intense. So that might mean you have to talk to someone. Maybe you have to have a cry. Maybe you have to have a stomp. Maybe you have to have a nice hot bath, a shower, sing it out, scream it out. Maybe you do need to go into the woods and scream, or, you know, hit your fists or squeeze that steering wheel really hard. So wrapping it back, the original question was, how does one stay grounded and not have all this stress come into the body? How can it be released when we can't shake it out on the spot? To review, the first thing, be with your body. Learn how to be in the system, be in the biology, be in the environment when you are in the work environment. Make sure you have breaks. And even if they're tiny, even if they're 30 seconds, to reset the system and really let yourself have a break in those moments. Don't, again, go to the phone and start looking on Facebook and scrolling and all those things and add more stress. Let it come out, let it dissipate. Let that cortisol and the adrenaline, the stress hormones, give it a chance to slurp back up into your bloodstream so you pee it out. Hydration is very important, because when we are under stress like that, our system might be producing a lot of stress hormones. We want to excrete and get that stuff out of our systems. Third thing was building capacity in general, right? Just becoming more resilient and regulated, building that capacity will allow us to be in that job in a more successful way. And I know first responders who see seriously intense stuff, and they have said to me, when they get into this work, when they're with their bodies and they allow themselves to process as the pieces come out, or come up, I should say, they are less traumatized after that day or after that week or after that, stint of work. As I said, I'm going to remind you, if you're on that first responder call, your job is to stay calm and resilient and regulated, but not shut down. That then leads me to the fourth thing, which is when you do leave, when you go home at the end of the day, have almost a routine or a ritual, I would say, to let this stuff move out. How you do that is going to be very different depending on what you have access to, where you live. It might even be dependent on the day. Some days you might have more time, other times you might have 5 minutes, but make the 5 minutes last. Allow yourself to feel what maybe you didn't sense, what you had to shut down and compartmentalize because you had to do your job well, because you still need to do your job well. But then go, oh yeah, there was that one case, gosh, and track. Again, by doing this, by tracking and having this moment after work, not only are you processing the stress of the day, you're building up resiliency and that muscle to process your own stuff that you're holding from years before, from decades before. Does that make sense? So there's these ways that we can use the current situations we're in and stressful things that occur now in the moment to help heal the stuff that occurred a long, long time ago, whether it was generations, and I even did a video not too long ago on past life trauma. So again, a few things to check out in addition to this video, but I hope this has answered your question to the person who asked it. I have no doubt that many people watching this know of people who are in these first responder situations, maybe you yourself, or maybe it's just a stressful job, right? Heck, people that are school teachers, nurses, raising a whole family. There's just all these stressors that are coming in all the time. Many jobs require that high level of resiliency, and many of us will just store that stuff inside, and we won't even know that we're doing it until, you know, we can't sleep anymore at night, or we start to get symptoms and chronic conditions and mental troubles that are connected to stored traumatic stress. All right, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for learning and listening. Be sure to check out the other links that go with this video in the Show More section. And if you haven't yet subscribed to this channel, somewhere near this video is a little bell. You just click on that and it will give you notifications every time I load a new video. Thank you for being here, and we will see you next time.